about choices, no doubt.
Choices.
Looking at your life from the inside.
That's right.
Life's about choices, no doubt. Looking at your life from the inside. Life's about choices, no doubt.
Speak on it.
Looking at your life from the inside. Life's about choices, no doubt.
West side.
Looking at your life from the inside.
Family, it's your boy, Lamonte Faison, with You Versus Yourself podcast, where the truth and you collide. If you like my content, please like and subscribe to my channel. And remember, I'm still in the building.
Family, it's your boy, Lamonte Faison. Y'all know that I'm in the building. This is where you and the truth collide. Listen, I got a special guest today because this topic is about unveiling the mask of the pretender in men. So we're going to have this conversation today. But before we do, let me introduce my guest, Mr. Carl Latting. I know him a little better than some of you do, so I call him CL, all right? He is the founder of BLP Coaching. He's going to tell us what is BLP Coaching, and welcome to the show, Carl.
Hey, thank you for having me. As he said, my name is Carl Latting, and he likes to call me CL. Feel free to do the same. I am the founder of BLP Coaching. BLP stands for Best Life Practices. And what we do is both one-on-one coaching in terms of something called life expansion coaching, where we touch on the four major domains of our lives, which is our spiritual, physical, our financial, and our social. And the goal is to expand. And so we do that just by helping people find out where they are by using something that we call the code, or another way to say that is radical honesty, just to know exactly where we are. And then find out, what do you want? Where are you looking to go? And then we reverse engineer that from where you're looking to go to where you actually are. And one of the interesting things that we do that is fun is wherever somebody says that they want to go, we ask them to 5x it, meaning 5 times greater. And the reason for that is because if you were able to get there, you may not put in the kind of time, effort that's required, because you believe, hey, it's in my back pocket, I could get there. But when you 5x it, you know that the only way I can get here is that if I invite God into it. And it's going to take some faith. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some belief. And what we've been able to see is some miraculous results. And also we do coaching with organizations with BLP, where we do workforce development as well as leadership coaching. And typically the ceiling or the sticking point where an organization is, or a work unit or a group, tends to revolve around people's self-concept in terms of how they see themselves as leaders. And so we try to help them to break through those bottlenecks. And it's going well. We're upstart. We're new. We started in July 2025, and we're picking up some traction here.
You're doing outstanding work, Carl, and we thank you for that. And listen, I picked up on a couple of things that you talked about. And this topic today, ladies, is unveiling the mask of the pretender in you. And gentlemen, all right, Carl mentioned something earlier where he used the words radical honesty. And as somebody who wore a mask for a good portion of his life, radical honesty was not even a concept. So we're going to talk about this because we're in a society where I don't know if people are actually being themselves. You know, we choosing sides. You know what I mean? And there's chaos seem to be going on all around us. And you watch people lie, even though you see them on video saying something else. And they say, don't believe your eyes, believe what we say. It's a lot of things going on out there. And I've just come to the conclusion is that we're just wearing masks. You know what I mean? We're just pretending to be something that we're not, just to fit in. We normally have people on television lying and don't even believe sometimes the stuff that they are actually saying out of their mouth, which brought me to my topic today, which is, again, unveiling the mask of the pretender in you. And listen, I'm one of these guys that I can't go out and have a topic and talk about something if I don't use myself first. So I'll be very disingenuous if I didn't tell you I didn't wear a mask for a good portion of my life. And let me tell you about that mask. Where I met Carl at was in church. And I'll be very honest with you. When I first went to church, which I said, I'm gonna find me a woman. Now, I wasn't looking to be married. I wasn't looking to do any of those things. I was looking to sleep around. I wanted to have sex. And, the conventional wisdom was, you can go to church and the women in there, they'll have sex with you. Now, that's interesting, but because we're in church, they go to the club the night before and show up on Sunday to church. That was kind of the mindset. And what's interesting about it is that I knew going in that I wasn't going to be authentic, that I was faking, and that I had a one-track mind, and it was a motive of mine to go in there and just get women. That was kind of the goal. And as I journeyed in the church and began to experience some things and manipulate and prey on the weak or the vulnerability of the women, I realized that at some point I was unhappy within myself. And because of that, I wanted to do something about it. The first thing I did have to ask myself, why? Why would you take advantage of other people's vulnerability? And I'll tell you why, because I was covering up my own pain, my own hurt. And when I started off this segment, I talked about all the people out there who are masking and not being them real selves, because if I myself, you might not like me. I might not fit in. And then you kick me to the curb, and now I'm out here lonely. I have no friends. So in order to fit in, I began to do things that other people do. Now, I'll be lying to you to say if I was the only one in church doing that. That was not true. There's a plethora of people in there doing that. And so I wanted to heal. That was the truth. In fact, I wrote a book called Unveiling the Mask of the Pretender. That book today is on Amazon. And if you look at some of the reviews, you hear people saying, I've never seen anybody blast their own behavior the way the author Lamonte Faison did. But I didn't want to pretend anymore. In fact, I think the first line said, I preyed on women in the church. Their vulnerability was my field of choice. I would seek them out like a lion stalking his prey. What was going on within me? I was insecure. I spoke well, so that worked for me. And that's what we see that's going on in society today, with individuals wanting to fit in. And so we mask and we short with our representatives. But today on You Versus Yourself podcast, you can heal yourself. You can change. You can do something different today. Carl, tell me about your experience, because like I said, we met in the church back in the day. And what was your take on that when we was in church in those early years and in some of our immaturity, and now we're grown up now? Give me your take on that.
Um, my take was a little bit different than yours in that respect. I didn't date anybody uh in the church to my recollection. Like one person I could think of, the next person I dated at the church I got married to. And part of the reason why is just because I wasn't doing that at church doesn't mean that I wasn't doing it. I just wasn't doing it at church. I had this thing in my mind that this is different than that.
Right.
And it was okay to do this to women who weren't in the church, but not okay at church. And so the interesting thing is that I had a desire for ministry. I wanted to. That had been one of my things since I was a kid, to be a pastor, to be a preacher. And so my calculus logically in my head was, listen, I already know that I got this urge, right? That I like women. And there's just no path that I can see for me to get to where I want to go without me being married. And so uh, I just chose somebody, right? And I got married. And I
Wait,
chose
wait,
based
wait,
on
wait, wait,
all
wait,
the
wait, wait, wait,
wrong things.
wait. What you mean? You said I just chose somebody like
Yeah,
abracadabra. What do you mean?
I did, because the thing is that when I think about the quote unquote selection, I mean, I was, operating in ministry in a very, very uh, small way, right? Like minister in training, that kind of thing. And so uh, I knew that there were women who were interested in me. I knew them by name, but uh, I just got to the place. I've heard some women say it this way: is that if a guy doesn't choose you, that is doesn't have anything to do with you. It just means that he wasn't ready. But when he's ready, he'll choose whoever is there. And I don't know if it's just that simple, but that is what happened in terms of me. When I had made my mind up, it was, well, who am I looking at right now? And I made a very, very immature choice
Yes,
without considering that person has a life and a history and their wants and their desires. All I was thinking about was my professional goal. And
yes,
then we start thinking about um, the matters of the spirit. Well, that is a whole lot more than a profession. I mean, that is more of a calling that is going to take, as you're saying, uh, for us to be true and not to pretend.
yes,
And so that was kind of my experience. And so my life has uh done that, played a instrumental role in my life, because everything that I was trying to do, because of the tumultuous nature of that marriage, which led to a divorce at that point, then I would say, look, I'm done with it. I got to find something else to do, because nobody's going to listen to a divorced preacher. And so, yeah, my experience was different in that respect. Uh, Go ahead.
I want to know. You know what's interesting is that sometimes it seems like when we were there or in a church environment that you almost feel pressured to be married, right? That in fact, the scriptures used to be thrown out. It's better to marry than to burn. And look, we're young coming in church, and so I think even though I came in initially say, yeah, find me a woman. I I think though that at some point I did want a good woman. I do believe that. But the problem is that I still had these proclivities and I haven't done any work on myself. And let me tell you the thinking era. I said, this is me in 20 something. I said, well, if I get a woman, that'll take care of my proclivities.
Right. See, that's right. Because I think I was
Yeah,
about 24, 23, 24 at that time. And so I got married at 25. So I had the same belief. And see, and this is why it's important, what you're doing, the work that you do, especially with men of all ages, especially the younger ones, because there's just so much misinformation, disinformation, and just wrong beliefs about things like that if you had a father or a man in your life who also is not pretending, who's
right,
telling you exactly what's going on with him, to say that, hey, just because you get married doesn't mean that this is going to go away. You
right.
still going to be fighting this fight to make sure that you possess your vessel with honor, and that you carry yourself in a dignified way, that if you are going to move into higher levels of responsibility, that you're going to need a higher level of character. Nobody was really saying that. They just, like you said, hey, if you don't do this, then you're out of favor, right?
And you know what's funny is I laugh about it now because it's not a funny thing, but I laugh about it. Some of the people that we looked up to in the church was doing the same thing. And then when you go to them for some advice, they don't even acknowledge it. And I'm sitting here thinking, dude, I know what you're doing. You are pretending. I know what you're doing. And you hold this office. And what is the problem? And I said, this is why I say, man, we mask and we pretend. We don't want anybody to know what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, and one of my mentors put it this way. They said that where truth is, God is, and where God is, transformation is possible.
Mhm.
And so I have a feeling that many times we and other people, like you said, who are holding certain positions, they don't want to get into that truth because do they want to transform or do they believe that it's even possible for them? Because I honestly, I could tell you, it's like, I just said, listen, especially in my 20s, it's like, look, I don't know if that's even possible.
Right, right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing about telling the truth, number one, to yourself, and then being able to share that truth with other people. Because number one, other people, they're battling the same thing. But number two, is that to be honest takes faith
Yes.
because you don't know what's going to happen on the other side of truth. However, the truth is the truth. It is the real. It is what took place. And so when we operate in fiction, then basically it just leads to fantasy and an unsure foundation. You can't build anything on lies and fiction. So if you've made the decision that I want to become something other than what I have been, it always starts with the truth.
Yes. And which it seems like that's a task for many of us. Like
Yeah,
I started.
because if you just think about just even what you've already been saying, when you start talking about people telling the truth, you already know that it is going to potentially destroy some relationships. It may destroy the possibility of you moving into certain places of employment or all those things. As a matter of fact, one person put it this way. They said that there's three types of lies that we like to tell. There's obviously the lies of commission, right? That just a out and out
Yes.
lie that, hey, the sky is red. Well, we know it's not, you're lying, right? But then there's a lie of omission where I'm leaving things out that I know are important to the decision you're getting ready to make.
Yes.
I know the truth, but I'm leaving it out. That's a lie of omission. But then there's this thing that they call a wandering generality, where a person, they don't like to lie, but they also feel like if they tell the truth, that this is going to hurt them in some way, shape, or form. So when you ask them a direct question, they begin to wonder and start telling the story about, well, when I was 13 and I went through this, I didn't
Right.
ask you that. What happened?
Right.
Right? Because
Absolutely.
they know if I tell, just answer the question,
Right.
it's
Go
going
to
to
the
make me
point.
look bad.
Right. They operate like politicians. You ask them a question like, man, why are you over there deflecting? Let's
Correct.
get to the point. But I
Correct.
get it though. Younger, I think Bill Clinton was in office. And I used to sit back and watch television. I'm watching these guys. After we do dirt, we got the audacity to bring the woman in the picture and have her stand by our side. And I remember
No, the
when
wife.
yes, and I
Yeah.
remember watching Bill Clinton and bring and Hillary came out to stand next to her. Let me tell you what I said. I said, that's got to be humiliating. Right. And I remember one of my deeds that my wife was backing me and I was dead wrong as two left feet. And it dawned on me that I put her in a bad light and in a bad situation. That kind of hurt me. It did. It hurt me. And so, I
You
said,
think
man,
it hurt you as much as it hurt her?
no, but listen, yes, because I cared for her. And it definitely destroyed our trust. And we end up getting a divorce, right? Again, the reason why I title my podcast You Versus Yourself, because we are our own worst critics and enemies. And we get there because when you talked about radical honesty, that's not really our focus. We so far from that in many cases that it's interesting how we even make it to this far in life, right? So again, back to Bill Clinton, I watched Hillary up there and I'm thinking, why do we go to these women when we get in trouble and we want them to support us, but we don't have enough in us to have a conversation with them and tell them that I'm struggling? Where's that trust at? Or do we think that woman ain't trying to hear that? So we say, I'm
Well,
not going to hurt her. So I'm not going to tell her the truth. You got the floor.
no, I think what it really is you've been lying to her the whole time from the
Mhm.
start. So if we think of it this way, when he met her, right? Was he being himself, or was he saying, I am this very erudite man who's now a Yale Rhodes Scholar and I'm on my way to doing great things? And he knew the lie of commission, that she's associating that with a good character. Because how
Yes.
can you be president without being a good character, at least at
No.
the time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we see all the time. I know people who are living double and triple lives. They are
Yes.
one person when they are at home and they do that well. Then they are another person when they are at work. But then when they get with other people, their friends, they're a totally different person. And
Yes.
so if they were to actually be honest with their, in this case, we're talking about Bill and his wife, with his wife, then she may realize, have never known you,
Yes.
because you've never told me who you really were. You've
Right.
been basically playing this role the entire time. And so now to tell the truth means that I have to basically sacrifice or throw away potentially everything that we've had up until now, even though it ain't real anyway.
Correct. Right. And that's sad, because that's 20, 25 years that you've been wearing a mask
Mm-hmm.
and pretending. It's funny because when I talk about society, and, I talked about my escapades in church, but when we look at society, I take a look at Trump, and I take a look at his wife, and the lady had to be humiliated. And they show on camera sometime where she swats his hand away. She don't really want to hold his hand, almost as if, I find you disgusting. You've been lying to me. You've been telling me something on this side, but over here, you've been messing around with other women. And we know this to be true. And we know that behavior, right? And so when you look at that, I'm thinking, wow, it's
Let me add to that.
go
I think
ahead.
it might also be, it's just the public nature of it, that
Mhm.
when the things, as you said, we know to be true are for the entire world to hear and see,
Yes.
right? I think it might even be different if it could just be in the house,
Yes.
like what the average person or married couple might go through. But in that case, we ain't talking about the city or the country,
No,
we're talking about the
everybody
world.
know now.
Right.
Everybody see it, right? And and so the interesting thing about, and I didn't laugh at it. I took it right back to me. I said, look how we humiliate our women. Now, it can be reversed, but tonight I'm kind of talking about the men. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm thinking, look how we humiliate our women. And it's a whole lot of us cheat. It's a whole lot of us that go down that line, because you see them in interviews talking about it all the time. Even pastors in the pulpit, right? I've been around some of those. Even some of them are abusive, but they won't tell. Their wives are suffering in silence. I know this to be a fact. Do I want to pretend, or do I want to get better? Do I want to heal, or is this just a game for me? Right? These are just questions that we ask. Where do I really want to be? Call BLP coaching, taking you to the next level, expanding your horizons, and all of those things. Do we really want to be there? Or are we just here pretending, and is it a game to us? But we're messing with real people. And again, I don't applaud myself. I admonish myself. Lamont, your behavior was unacceptable. You was hurting people in a church. You was masking. We're not talking about their participation in it. I'm only responsible for my behavior and what I do and how I come across, right? And that's why I wrote that book and called myself a pretender, The True Confessions of a Man. I started talking about my insecurities, everything that I had going on with us. However, that other thing that we talk about is that in the beginning, as boys, think about going to the school dance or going to school. We're taught at an early age, how many phone numbers did you get? My stepfather ain't never sat down, Carl, and say, hey, man, let's talk about the birds and the bees. Let's talk about you doing the right thing. Let's talk about your character. We ain't talk about those things. And so as a child, I want to get phone numbers. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to hit. I want to hit at the end of the night. We at the school dance, we at the prom, guess what's on my mind?
Knocking.
I want to hit. If you ain't getting down, we ain't going on a prom. I got a limousine. and I got a tux and I got a tuxedo, and it ain't free for you. Right. And that was my thinking, because that's kind of what we've been taught. But if you don't get a hold of that and you go into your adulthood with that thinking, that is going to be a problem. Somebody asked me the other day, Lamont, what do you think about Sean Combs and P. Diddy? I said, they said, man, that money went to his head. I said, no, it didn't. I said, I am certain that that stuff was in Sean Combs already. And then you gave him money. He went and earned some money and that power to go along with that insecurity and that stuff that's going on within him. Right. And so typically money don't make you do that. It's the stuff that's already in you. Now you have the power to actually do more of that, whatever that is. Think about the people that are in office. You even have people that some would say, well, they're not that good looking, but they got money and they got power. Right. And some of the things that they wanted to do when they was coming up, when they didn't have money, they do now. Right. A lot of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, is already within us. And that's why I'm always talking about self-reflection, being your authentic you. And that's why, again, You Versus Yourself podcast, we are our biggest critics and enemy. And if we can start with personal responsibility for ourselves and heal, we will change the trajectory of our life, and we will model different behavior for our children. And to me, that's important. And so when I see pastors now, I don't put them on a pedestal, because I think I did that when I was younger. Oh, that's the pastor right there. Because those men are not perfect. And some of them still deal with abuse. They deal with their own insecurities. They deal with their traumatic experience in their childhood. And if they don't do the work on it, it shows up and expresses itself in our adulthood. And so it's interesting. Carl said earlier, he said, listen, I didn't necessarily do my dirt in church, but that don't mean I wasn't doing it. Same blueprint. For me, it was like a club, though. I mean, you want to go find a woman, go to the church. It's free. I ain't got to pay no money. Right? You send that plate around, I just keep passing it. Right? So, Carl, the guys that you hang around, did you guys ever have those discussions in church about being married, or we have to be married? What was that thinking? Because I think you said you came in, and I'm not sure if you said you needed to be married, but you had your sights on ministry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was just it. It was the fact that, like you just said, is that I wasn't necessarily doing it at church or in the church, but I was doing it outside of church. But the desire, in my heart for ministry said that, um, you know, you're gonna have to stop this, right? This has to end, because there's just no way that those two worlds can live together. And so that was basically the reason for me getting married. Uh, had I not had that desire, I would not have gotten married, at least not at that time. And so when discussions about marriage, just with guys around the church, not a lot that I can recall. But you did say a couple things that I think are interesting about um, the average person or man who gets married, and the quote unquote humiliation they put their wives through is because they never actually considered her when they married her.
Right.
Everything about the relationship was about him and what he wanted to achieve, obtain, and uh, not so much about her being fulfilled in this marriage. If that was the case, then he would be looking to lean in to learn himself and to learn her. But many times that kind of effort and work was not being done. So then they get to a place where they quote unquote fall out of love, or they see something that catches their eye. But did they ever, at any juncture in their relationship with their wife, put in the kind of time and energy that it would take for both parties to actually become, as it says, one flesh?
Yeah. And I think that's important. And you make a good point. Did I ever consider her? Right.
Right.
Or was it all about me?
And
And
see, and that's the thing about when you start talking about, and this is why this is a very good topic, and it's also this weird conundrum. It's this catch-22 because the kind of man I think that most women would like or is going to be a kind of man that you look up to. They are accomplished or they have achieved a lot in life. They're ambitious and they might carry some degree of power. Many times that will also come along, will generate some money. Uh, However, the guy who gets to that place, there is something in him that is also aggressive. There is something in him, there's this fire that is chasing for more. And typically, that type of person does not look backward, he only looks forward. And so, whoever he gets along the way is kind of like a conquest or a possession, right?
Yeah.
And so, they haven't necessarily looked at her as a valuable, uh, uh, I don't want to use the term asset, but almost like an advisor or someone who's influential, a counselor, a who's on this a part of this quote unquote organization that we have now, this marriage, to accomplish whatever that thing might be. And I think that typically the average man thinks that it's because we have this superhero thing, right? That I got to do it on my own, right?
Yes.
Or I want the glory of doing it on my own. So I don't share this vision and this thing the way that I should with, in this case, the person who matters most to it, which would be their spouse.
Yes. Yeah. Let me tell you what's interesting about that. It, our behavior was so crazy. We started going into scriptures talking about they had multiple wives. They had multiple wives back in the day. Why we can't have multiple wives? But let me tell you, look at the thinking area. Dude, if I can't handle one woman, what I'm going to do with two or three?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have the coping skills and that mindset to be able to deal with that, right? So it's important, again, if I want to heal and I want to change the trajectory of my life, radical honesty, which you said earlier, is mandated. And it's
Yeah,
mandated.
because that's a whole um, endeavor in itself. It might take somebody, a do if you're listening, try it for a day, 24 hours. Don't tell no lies, right? And what do I mean? The phone rings and it's your baby's father, and your son says, it's daddy, and you say, oh, tell him I'm not here. Lie, right?
Already teaching them to lie.
Right. Or you uh getting up, going to work, you hit a few red lights, maybe you should have left early, you walk in, it's 8:03 instead of 8 o'clock, and they say, hey, everything all right? And then you say, oh, I got pulled over. Lie, right? No, you were slow and you didn't do what you should have done.
Yes.
Right. And so that's the thing. Try it for 24 hours and you'll see the difficulty. You try it for a week, then you'll be hearing yourself telling the lies.
Uh-huh.
For
Yeah.
instance, uh, now a big thing with me is to correct it because now I can hear it so loud in my head because some of the lies, they just make the story sweeter. Right. But they didn't happen. Where you increase the size of the amount of the size of the fish or the timing or you just these small things. You're like, dude, that's not, just tell it like it happened.
Just
Right? If
exaggerate,
you're gonna tell it.
embellish it.
Right. The embellishment, these are lies. And so that's the thing. Try it for a day. No lies.
Hey, here's
Right?
what's funny about that. Hold on, Carl. Let me tell you what's funny. When I was younger, we used to go fishing, and it was cool. We was little, so the fish may be this big. But when my stepfather done that, he tell a story. Man, we caught about 3 or 4 fish this big, and I used to be like, man, that fish is not that big. He would embellish the story, but watch this. When we got into our adulthood, he still do that today. And I'm grown now. I'm like, man, stop lying. That fish was like this, dude. That fish wasn't no 2-pound fish.
Yeah. And see, but that's the thing is that if you start telling the truth, then you will feel the pull to say, hey, I've been lying a long time. Do I
Yes.
want to spend the rest of my life doing that? Or do I want to actually see what can take place
Yes.
if I be honest? Because the thing about telling the truth and being honest is this, and the reason why we do the radical truth is that truth makes you make a decision. And that's why people don't want to tell it. So for instance, when we talk about physical, spiritual, financial, and social, and we'll go through each area when I'm, dealing with a client. But many times what will happen is this. They'll say, well, listen, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, you cannot use 7. Where are you in your body? Right? Or where are you in your spiritual? Where are you in your physical? Where are you in your financial? Or you just ask them, hey, where are you? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, you cannot use 7. How well do you manage yourself? And what ends up happening is everybody has this desire to use 7 because that's this wandering generality, because 7 kind of feels like I'm doing okay, right? But if I say 8 or 9, then I know that I'm about to get some follow-up questions that's going to make it evident that that's not the case. But
Yes.
if I say 6 or 5, then it sounds like I'm a loser. But this is not for me, this is for you. What's the truth,
Yes. Right. And
right?
that is a hard thing. That is a hard thing for some. What I would say for you guys is saying, well, how do I change that, Lamont? How do I change my life? I do think, and I say this quite often, is that you got to be honest with yourself. When I started changing my life and changing my trajectory of my life, I started being honest with myself for who I was. And I remember going to therapy and getting some information so I can heal. And I was true to that information, and I made it applicable to my life. And then I began to believe in myself. That is the reason why I wrote Unveiling the Mask of the Pretender. I exposed those lies. I didn't blame no devil. I blame myself. I blame myself. I am responsible for my behavior. And if the notion is true that if you resist the devil, he'll flee from you, well, I didn't do that. In fact, we hung out. Me and the devil kicked it, right? I take full responsibility. In fact, I called the devil up and said, come hang out with me. He didn't call me, all right? So when you're being responsible for yourself and saying, I want to heal, I am now going on the offense. So all of that guilt and shame that I was dealing with is because I was hiding. I was masking. But as I began to expose myself, I began to free myself. So you out there that's listening to this podcast, say, you know what? I want to change my life. I can identify with that pretender. And like Carl said, I don't always tell the truth. Why am I telling these white lies? Why am I teaching my children to lie? No, tell daddy I ain't here. Well, you're teaching your child to lie. And so he's going, and I don't want to hear this little white lie. No, it's a lie. It's not the truth. So in order for us to change, again, step 1, I have to be honest with myself. I have to acknowledge that I have some flaws and some things that need to be cleaned up. Then I have to open myself up to get new information. Now, for people who say I can't really afford therapy and counseling, listen to podcasts. Go get some books. Listen to the audios. You can get new information and remove that old information, that old intel that is inside of us. All right. So that's very important. Again, this is You Versus Yourself podcast. I want to thank my guest today, Carl Latting, CL, for coming on to the show. And to all my listening viewers, we got one goal. And that is for when you and the truth collide, that you take that truth, make it applicable to your life, and then throw your hands in the air like you just don't care. All right. Y'all have a great evening. And remember, I'm still in the building.